Hey guys, how's it going? Patrick here. Let's do something we've been talking about since I started this channel. Let's actually start talking about games. Specifically today we are going to talk about Star Trek. Okay, welcome back. This is episode 4. Finally going to talk about games. Specifically, we're going to talk about Star Trek role-playing today. We got a long history with that. Before we get too much further, though, I'd like to ask you to help me out here. Subscribe, get some notifications, say you like the video, tell your friends, share it. Down here, whole bunch of buttons to help you do that. Click that bell to subscribe. No, you click the bell to get notifications. You click the word subscribe to subscribe. Never mind. Anyway, we are going to talk about Star Trek role-playing. Specifically, we're going to talk about crew and party dynamics in Star Trek role-playing. Because it's a little different in Trek gaming, I've noticed, than it is in several other kinds of role-playing games you're going to wind up in. I'm going to use a few examples from games that I've been in or that I am currently in. I'll get to that in just a minute. I will be talking about the current Star Trek role-playing game, Star Trek Adventures by Modiphius. Yeah, there we go. I'll figure this whole thing out eventually. This one right here. I'm going to provide some links down in the comments and the description below for how to get to these products and purchase them. I would ask you that if you go through DriveThru RPG, if you go in through my affiliate link, it doesn't cost you a penny extra, but it does help me build up some credit, buy some more games, helps the channel out, because the more games I can take a look through, the easier it is to find the right system for what we're going to do. As I said earlier, we're going to talk about some real-life examples on interaction, positive and negative. We're going to be referencing a game I've been involved in online for the past, coming up on 9 years, I guess. It's called Star Trek: The Last Anton. This is the URL. I'll also have it down in the description of the video. While we're talking about Last Anton, since I'm really proud of that game, otherwise I probably wouldn't have been involved in it for as long as I have, I want to give a huge shout out to a guy that I've known for many years online, fellow Trek gamer. His name is Wayne Peters. Like many artists, he's always looking for work. His portfolio is listed down below. He has also got one of the great Star Trek role-playing resources online right now. It's a very, very customizable paper mini maker for those who use miniatures in their gaming for setting scenes and things of that nature. That's also linked down there. But on Facebook, Wayne did me a huge solid. I was half joking around because I've been looking for a way to get a picture of my character, Captain Treva. And one of the things that we do on the last Anton, mostly people do it to humor me and make me be quiet, is to find the actor that we'd like to play our character. Well, my character is played by the late Robert Urich. And he's a Denobulan, like Dr. Phlox in Enterprise. So my issue became, how much work is it going to be for me to find a picture of Robert Urich, put it in a Starfleet captain's uniform from the movie era, and make him a Denobulan? And this right here, this is what Wayne came up with in exceptionally short period of time. I was just looking for how much work and what basically I would have to do, because while I do a little bit of photography on the side, I'm not nearly as comfortable in Photoshop as a lot of people. He came up with this picture of Treva, and I wanted to say thank you, man. That was above and beyond the call of what I wanted to do for just a picture on his character sheet. So that was very cool. Thanks, Wayne. Go check out Wayne's stuff. I don't think you'll regret it. If you know somebody who needs an artist with a lot of experience and some really good work, go check out his portfolio at crowstuff.co.uk. So, crew dynamics in Star Trek. It's different than in a lot of other games. One of the things you have to realize when you're playing Star Trek, when you're playing any licensed, any kind of licensed franchise, be it the Dresden Files or Star Trek or Star Wars or Harry Potter or whatever, one of the things you have to do is you have to find people that are willing to make the buy-in. There's a huge buy-in as to the approach you take to the property, to how things are supposed to work. Let me backtrack, give you a little bit of background on me and Trek. Star Trek and I both debuted in 1966. I literally grew up with Star Trek. I don't remember a time when Star Trek wasn't around. Technically, there was a 5-month period between my birth and the debut of The Man Trap, the first episode that saw air in September of '66. But I don't remember those 5 months. And Trek was something I did with my dad a lot. He always watched it that I knew of. He had one of the early light-up models of the Enterprise hanging in his study when we were in, I want to say I remember this in North Dakota, but it was most likely when we were living in California. But I mean, that's something I did with my dad. I watched Star Trek with my dad. I kind of remember watching it sometimes with him, but again, I was, when it debuted, I was between 5 months, and I was about 3 when it was originally canceled. But I remember Trek with the Old Man, and after my folks split up, I watched it religiously after school in reruns because it was showing, if I hurried right after school, I'd be home in time for Speed Racer and Star Trek. I would wind up missing Speed Racer if I didn't rush, but I was always home in time to watch Star Trek after school. So, I mean, that's how I spent my childhood. That has always been there for me. And, Dad realized this when I was about 10. He bought me, for my birthday, this. He says, trying to get the light to not glare on it. This is not my original copy. That got worn out a long time ago. I mean, this is, my God, the book itself came out in like 73, along with these. The original blueprints. Also not my original set. A lot of my original Star Trek stuff from when I was a kid got lost in a fire 20 some odd years ago. Short circuit in the wall, and it happened to be the wall that my bookshelf was against. But I got this set. This is really cool. I don't know if you can see that very clearly, but I will never part with these. That, my friends, is James Doohan's autograph. He played Scotty. But Trek, always been part of my life. So I got into role-playing when I was 14. I played Dungeons and Dragons and several other games. Gamma World, Star Frontiers, Traveler. Played a lot of Traveler when I was a kid. It was always kind of fun being able to, finally get a character that lived through character generation. Then, 1983, after I had moved it down to Houston, I discovered this. This is Fast's Star Trek role-playing game. First edition came out in 82. The second edition came out in 83. I've been role-playing on Star Trek in one way or another ever since. Moved up to this from last Unicorn. I've got the Next Generation and DS9 versions too. I just didn't feel like dragging them in. Graduated to this from Decipher. Which is the basis for The Last Anton, the game that I'm playing with Davy Jones and Doug Burke and a couple of my friends from the Trek RPG Net forums. And then there's this guy, which, Star Trek Adventures by Modiphius. Caveat: I wrote part of that. So if I sound biased, I might be. I didn't have anything to do with any of the rules other than play testing them. That was by a fairly erudite man named Nathan Dowdell in England. He has been writing this particular rule system for several different games from Modiphius. Excellent game. It's got its quirks, but we recently converted over from Decipher to Star Trek Adventures on Anton, and we are really kind of enjoying it so far. We've only just started the latest episode with the STA rules, so we're still kind of getting the hang of it in actual play as opposed to playtest situations. But I wrote for that. They recently released some pre-generated characters from. Right now, the two out are from original series and Next Generation. I wrote the original series characters. I also wrote the first 23rd century playtest adventure called Adrift, which will eventually find its way into a sale, a product for sale. Crew interaction and Star Trek role-playing requires a lot of buy-in from the audience. That is to say, the players. Because to make it work, you want it to feel like what you're doing. Like I said earlier, it's largely the same for any franchised, licensed setting. If you're playing a Marvel superhero type game, you want it to feel like you're in a comic book or in the movies. If you're playing the Dresden Files, you know the rules there too, because you've likely read the books and you know what to expect. And it's the same, perhaps more so, for Trek gaming, because the setting can be very specific. Most of the time, not 100% of the time, because DS9 was set on a space station, but the principles are similar. But you're generally going to be a starship crew. And the vast bulk of players out there, in spite of what the Klingon fanboys might want to tell you, they are going to be Starfleet crews. Whether you're playing early history in Enterprise, or you're playing original series, or you're playing Voyager, most of the time you're going to have a Starfleet or proto Starfleet kind of crew, and that generally means that you're going to be some part of some sort of a military or paramilitary organization. Starfleet is a paramilitary organization. They have a military rank structure, a command structure, to make things easy on them as they go out exploring strange new worlds. And your player characters are going to fall into that military hierarchy more than likely. What that means is that some characters are going to outrank other characters. And that does not give the players the right to abuse that. We had issues in the last Anton with some of the buy-in, because while one of the players, and you can go look, you'll be able to figure out what I'm talking about if you read through some of our early episode posts. We had a player who didn't quite grasp the aesthetic. There are a lot of ways to approach Star Trek. You've got the original series. You've got the original crew movies that have a particular vibe. Exploration, do something if you do it wrong. There's not a whole lot of on-camera discussion and debate about things, whereas in Next Generation there's considerable consultation. The captain spends much more time consulting with his senior officers on Next Generation. And that's how they're there to advise, and that's how it works. But then there's also the Deep Space Nine, more militaristic war movie kind of thing. With Last Anton, we're going for a much more original series vibe. It's set in the movie era. Right now, I think we are approaching the beginning of the events in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Our very first adventure was a kind of a sequel, as it were, to Star Trek III. And our third adventure, was a direct sequel to the events in Star Trek IV. The events that happened in the 23rd century. Let's see, it's a 30-some-odd-year-old movie. I don't think I'm spoiling anything. There's a huge time travel element in Star Trek IV. We did not participate in that. But in those early adventures, especially the first one, I was not the captain. I was not playing the captain. We had another player who was doing that. I was the executive officer and science officer. And this guy just didn't get it. Or he didn't want to get it. And it raised a lot of friction. A lot of friction. Eventually, we wrote his captain character out. We put him in as the head nurse. And they moved me up to captain. This is all in the first episode. But it was a direct result of this guy not buying in to the premise. We were going for a much more, bolder action. We weren't looking to make it a submarine movie. As it turns out, he hadn't even seen several of the original cast movies. He was very much a Next Generation, Deep Space Nine kind of player. And it just wound up not working out because he didn't buy into it, and it messed with the dynamics of how the other players were interacting, how their characters interacted, how the players interacted. You can drag a game down really, really, really fast if you've got all the characters walking on eggshells, and by extension, the players walking on eggshells. So you have to buy into it. Having that character have a rank does not mean that the player gets to go off willy-nilly and just start spouting orders about how things go. So you got to have a bunch of, it comes down to the players and a certain degree of maturity, what they're after. Like I said, you're playing starship crews, usually Starfleet starship crews. You're the good guys. Starfleet crews are not murder hobos. Star Trek adventures are not typically dungeon crawls. It's not about going out and finding the most stuff and the bestest stuff. No role-playing game is really about coming up with winners and losers. But Trek games, to me, are especially not about that. It is about people. dealing with other people, and people here is very generic. People could be humans. People could be, large orange gelatinous blobs. You never know. But the crew interaction, it comes down to the player realizing that he is not the character. The player has rank. Scratch that. Reverse it. The character has rank. The player does not. The player is just another guy at the table. So you have to be careful how you do that. It's up to the GM to make sure that the players remember this. In our game, Treva, my character, is the captain. He makes the decisions. Occasionally, he will talk to the other characters and find out what's going on, but a lot of times, Treva makes snap decisions that will affect the rest of the crew, the rest of the party. In other games that don't have this hierarchy, he would rightly be pulled apart by the other members of the party, and they would steal all his stuff. Now, behind the scenes, on almost everything we do, the player, will consult the other players. Hey guys, what do you think we ought to do? I need to have Treva make a snap decision. What do we need? What are we going to do now? And fortunately, most of us have bought into the vibe. We bought into the era, the way it is supposed to be. We know how the game is supposed to run. We know how the universe works. So we generally will reach a consensus pretty clearly, and then I can have Treva look really, really erudite. And that's all well and good, but it is a group effort as players. A lot of people seem to have trouble separating player and character during the game, which can be problematic. At this point, I'm going to have to stop. Got other obligations. I will get back to this shortly. As usual for you, it's just going to be a quick crossfade, but I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. All right, so we have determined previously that a lot of your interaction issues within the crew are going to very much depend on the players. This is a kind of a truth within any role-playing game, but it's going to be very telling within Trek role-playing because of the military hierarchy. Still getting used to this. The hierarchy that is involved with Starfleet. And as I said earlier, most of your crews are going to be Starfleet or former Starfleet, now civilians, but they are going to be familiar with the idea of a rank structure. It's it takes practice because to have the feel, you've got to have that to get a Star Trek feel. You've got to have that. You've got to have that structure, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily play out well at a table. But it's not an insurmountable issue. Some of you have listened through for the last 20-30 minutes have figured out that we had some issues, and some of you have probably paused the video, read some stuff, and then come back and wondering, Patrick, what the heck is going on? One of the questions that comes up a lot is, should the captain even be a player character, or should it be an NPC, a non-player character? Obviously, my vote is for PC. I've been role-playing in Star Trek for 35 years, and we've always had a PC captain. I think it just works better. It keeps things involved. But the key piece of evidence that I have for PC captains is the show itself. Give me a couple of minutes of indulgence. Let me show you what I mean.
M5's readout, Captain.
All right, my recommendations are as follows. We send down a general survey party, avoiding contact of all intelligent life on the planet's surface. The survey party will consist of myself, Dr. McCoy, astrobiologist Phillips, geologist Rollins, and science officer Spock. Energize. Energize. Kirk to Enterprise. Red alert.
What is it, Captain?
Cestus 3 has been destroyed.
Okay, what did you notice? One of the things I noticed, Captain Kirk is always on the landing party. The captain is a PC. And when he's told that he can't be part of the landing party, he gets pretty salty about it. My lighting was a little funny. Sorry about that. But I'm not starting over. We're just going to deal. Captain Kirk is a PC. The captain is going to be a player character. Checking my notes. Because he's the hero of the story. The PCs are the heroes of the story, and if they're not, my position is somebody's doing something wrong. But I'm definitely pro player character captain, but I can see where that's not going to work for everybody. Some groups don't adapt well to that. I've had my moments in the last Anton where I've just kind of leaped out in front of things without really consulting the other players. And you'll see the places. They haven't happened very often. Usually I confer. Other players like to be kept in the loop, and I try to accommodate that. I understand. I've been in their position. I like to be kept in the loop too. That is some of the problems I think we had early in last Anton. That and buying into the flavor of the game. We wanted much less of, Hunt for Red October than what we were getting. That being said, it isn't going to work for every table. The GM really needs to have a good feel for his players, and if he thinks that they can handle it. Sometimes, depending on the table, an NPC captain might be the best approach. But that question leads to another question that has come up on forums and in other discussions I've had over the years. Do the new rules handle give you directions on the whether the captain should be a PC or an NPC? No. They don't. They don't give you rules on character interaction. They can't. There's a problem in this version of Star Trek 35 years ago. There's going to be a problem in this version of Star Trek right now. Because the rule set is not going to help you out with the player interaction. It can't. That has to come from you. That said, they do give, especially STA, gives excellent advice on some character interactions, specific roles for specific characters. So you're not completely out to sea with the rules set, but you can't depend on the rule set to fix all your problems. That's not its job. And that's about it. That's all I've got to say. It comes down to people. I know some of you might have been coming here looking for definitive answers. It's not going to happen. I don't think there are any definitive answers. It's a table-by-table problem with players and GMs and their willingness to take on the tropes of Star Trek and their relative maturity. Some folks aren't ready, and they grow into it, and that's not a big deal. That's okay. We like it when people grow into things. But anyway, yes, I think you should have PC captains if you think you have a group of people that can handle it. Yes, I think Star Trek is a great way to learn team skills. I think it's a great role-playing setting for that kind of thing. Speaking of things coming down to people, this channel kind of depends on people for growth, for getting better, expanding our horizons. Please help my channel. Hit the subscribe link, click that bell, get some notifications, like the video, tell your friends, share this far and wide. I really appreciate that. While we're sharing things far and wide, I've got several friends who also talk about games. PapaGamer, he mostly talks about video games, but also science fiction, like I do. Questwise talks about all sorts of games. He's very widely invested, and the Complex Games Apologist. I hope I got that right. Links for these guys down in the description of the video. Go visit them. CGA, particularly has been talking a lot lately about Star Trek Adventures. He's got some excellent videos on how to handle many of the conceits within the game. We'll talk about those someday in the future, but go give them a visit. Let them know I sent you. Tell them I said hello. And we'll catch you guys later. I don't ever really do this, but live long and prosper, guys. Thank you so much. Take care.